Season's greetings. Welcome to our show, Ghosts R N.E.A.R, where we discuss various aspects of the paranormal and paranormal investigation. I am your host, Keith Johnson, the founder of New England Anomalies Research. With me is my co-host and co-founder, Sandra Johnson.
Merry Christmas, all.
Well, we are very fortunate this evening to have the return of two very distinguished special guests. David Manch, the Senior Advisor and Investigator of New England Paranormal, and Pat Rabideau, who of course is the Research and Development Coordinator of New England Paranormal. So we're very glad to have you guys.
Oh, thank you.
It must be December.
Thank you very much.
Yes, it must be the season.
It's a yearly tradition for us, I believe, at this point.
Exactly.
I like it.
So guys, what have you been up to in the past year? I know it's a loaded question. That could take a couple of hours in itself.
Well, it's been busy. We've been doing a lot more research in the last year, and some of it includes some of the things that we had discussed with you last year, and we brought some things tonight to show you the actual usage of these devices, and hoping that your viewers will enjoy watching how they actually work.
Sure they will. Sure they will. Very, very informative.
Paranormal has a pretty wide audience these days.
It seems to be getting bigger all the time, so.
And they want the how-tos.
Right. Well, we like to be the how-to guys and show them how to do it.
Exactly. So what have you got for us first?
Well, what we have for you, we're going to discuss and show you how the device that was conceived by me and invented and developed by Pat Rabideau, which we've coined the Faraday cage.
Yes.
This is a spin-off on a device that was conceived in the year 1836 by a British physicist by the name of Michael Faraday. It goes to show you that this is nothing new, and other teams have used similar devices, but what we've conceived here is something that's more practical for use on paranormal investigations. And the application of this is to prevent most, if not all in some instances, stray EMF from impacting on the equipment that you put inside of the device, such as a tape recorder, which, as we discussed before, the electromagnetic fields that you're subjected to can cause false readings on your tape recorder to be recorded, and upon playback, you're not sure what they are.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And of course, there's the cell phone towers and all sorts of interference from all over. It's just getting more and more. And as you brought up last year, there's just no way of avoiding it, whether you're inside the house or outside in the field.
It's everywhere. And in fact, since we were here last year, it's probably even twofold worse than it was when you're out there now and you're doing this research, which is client-based for the most part. And it's difficult to sift through this evidence and wonder what's actually paranormal and what's not, because some of it can be confusing.
Okay, I hope this doesn't detour us into a completely different direction, but we were actually investigating with Brian Hanwar last night, and this was not a N.E.A.R investigation. This was not with our group. He just invited us to come along, and he had a few different investigators there. They were using different Ovilus, Frank's box, these sorts of things. We don't use these types of investigative tools as a rule, but the other investigators were. This would not be useful with technology like that. I mean, again, I don't mean to take a complete detour, because a lot of people really don't put too much stock into these sort of devices, and I don't know where you guys fall on that spectrum.
Well, the Frank box, which is a kind of a real-time EVP listening device, would be something that you could probably devise a Faraday enclosure that could fit that inside of there, and you could use it. You could have a practical application for it. I think you really could, because essentially it's receiving signals from somewhere. If you're hearing any type of voice phenomena on the device, it's the same type of phenomena that's going to impact just a simple standard tape recorder. So I think the answer to your question is we could develop something like that and use it. This is the guy that would do it for you, though. He's the builder. I'm not the builder.
The cage itself is designed for radiated fields that fall within a range of 30 megahertz to 3 gigahertz. So anything below 30 megahertz would be measurable. or should be measurable if you use this type of Faraday enclosure.
I guess it would also depend on where your belief stands as far as, you know, are the ghosts or spirits or whatever supposedly is using these devices, are they picking out different words to use from the radio waves that exist, or are they somehow using some other way of communicating with the device?
There's so many theories that entail that. I tell you, we could sit here and talk about that all night. I don't know. I guess that's something we could probably make a note of to try in the future. If someone's interested in seeing what the results are, we're always happy to try. I think my credo, which I've shared with you before, is that there isn't anything that's unreasonable to try as far as gathering evidence, because none of the tools we use were devised specifically for this type of work anyway. So we're using those tools and basing them on some known scientific principle to see what we get out of that. So the more the merrier. If you have something that you want to try and suggest it, we're happy to look into doing it.
Okay, I like I said, I didn't mean to take us in a completely different direction, but
It's a good one.
I just figured, you know, I was thinking about it on the way over here.
Sure, a lot of people have wondered that too.
If you did use a Faraday cage for that application, at least if you had one set up and you were getting what you consider to be evidence, you could have a little more confidence in the data that you're gathering, because you know that you're able to protect your equipment within that range. So you can rule out cell phones, cordless phones, baby monitors, things like that. So you'd be less likely to be concerned about those things impacting your data.
You know how I love baby monitors too.
Well, they serve a purpose, but...
They do. But a lot of people confuse what they're hearing on there for paranormal, and it can pick up anything. They're multi-directional signals that come in, and the receiver inside there can be picking up just about anything, and most likely it is picking up everything, so.
As you said, there's a lot out there.
There is. A lot to be confused over, so, you know, anything that we can do to rule out some type of interference, then we're purifying the evidence that we're getting. And that's the whole point of developing these types of devices to take on the investigations with us. As we know that EVP evidence is some of the strongest evidence that you can collect. Photographic and video is pretty dicey because you can never be sure what you're looking at.
True, very true.
Refracted light and even poor photographic equipment will sometimes show anomalies that just, they're hard to tell what they are. But we know when we ask a question and we get a direct answer, and even if it's in a voice you may recognize or someone in the investigation recognizes, there's more, you know, it's a stronger probability that that's paranormal.
It's not random.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. But again, we have so many random signals coming in from everywhere now, we have to make sure that what we are listening to, it just helps to rule some of that stuff out. Is this perfect? Is it going to be fail-safe and rule out every single signal that could come through? No, but most of them it will.
Yeah, and you get so many EVPs that don't have anything to do with, or seemingly don't have anything to do with the conversation going on or the question asked, and you just, I mean, for me, I would normally just put it down to, oh, okay, well, that must be some sort of residual or whatever, but maybe not. Maybe it's something else coming in,
Right.
cell phone, as you said, or whatever.
And one of the things I tell people is to be a little bit leery of single word EVPs, especially if it sounds like a word, because it probably isn't. Most EVPs that are Class A EVPs or even Class B will typically be a sentence or more than one word. But the ones you hear that are one word, it could be anything from hiss to just a static discharge off the tape heads, which are nothing more than tiny magnets that are specialized for recording, erasing, and playback. So a lot of people will say, hey, listen to this, Dave. Tell me if this sounds like someone saying, hey. Well, it could be just the static, just the pop off the tape head. It could be someone taking a breath. As you know, that we often will think we had the device further away from us than we did. Or what we call microphone rustle, where if the microphone has made momentary contact with clothing, it can sound like a voice. It can sound like a word.
Right.
I get that all the time. I usually wear the microphone, so yeah, I do get a lot of that.
Especially if you're wearing leather, right? Remember that.
Right, right, yes. Spirits don't like it when you wear noisy leather. We know that.
Oh, there was an investigation. Were you involved where there was someone
actually
wearing
told you.
leather?
I was. It told me to take the jacket off. I think it was sick of listening to me talk about it. So the EVP actually said, well, then take it off and don't wear leather. So I stopped talking about it. Well, of course, I didn't know that until the next day when I played it back. But
Ended your career as the leather man.
I have not worn a leather jacket to an investigation since then. So I'm happy to say I'm just cotton
took
jackets.
the advice.
Right.
Live and
Something
learn.
silent.
Well, you have, now the last show that we did, and I was just talking about this with you, it seemed like as soon as we wrapped up, things started getting really interesting, and you were doing a lot of demonstration using the Faraday cage and EMF, K2. And I said, oh, this would have been so great to have this as part of the show. So we want to try to get that in for this show, if possible. And I
Sure.
heard that you have a demonstration all lined up for us.
Let us do this. So essentially, we'll use the K2 as an example because you can see the lights light up, so it's a little more visual for your audience. K2s can measure radiated fields as well, so measure microwaves or radio frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
So if I call this cell phone on the table, I should be able to get a response from the K2.
And
Now-
you certainly are getting a response. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Now, if I take this K2 and place it inside the cage, there's no response from,
No response at
from
all.
the K2.
And you don't even have it
As long as I don't have the signal
obscured, yeah.
projecting from this end,
Mhm.
it'll still protect it. This-
I'm wondering if you could pick that up because I don't think our audience can see that.
Yeah, we
Just
angled,
turn it
we
this
had
way.
it set up so that, I'll call one more time so you can see that,
and
and I have the phone right up to
it's
the
obviously
device.
not doing anything. But if
And you don't even have the end secured.
No, ma'am.
I take it out and you do the same thing. You see, it lights right up. And that's very good to know. That's very good to know for people on investigations when it's lighting up like that and so significantly that there may be explanations why it is. And this rules it out. This helps rule it out anyway, outside interference, which is good, very good.
Anything that falls within the 30 megahertz to 3 gigahertz range, it should shield that.
Mm-hmm.
As long as it's a radiated field.
That does work very, very well, extremely well.
And as you know, almost everyone's carrying a cell phone these days.
Right.
And even though we recommend that you turn your cell phone off during an investigation to avoid having an impact on your devices, not everyone will remember, for one.
Yes.
But not everyone can, because people have children or they
Absolutely.
may have an emergency or expect an emergency situation to come up where they need that phone call.
Don't ever expect Brian to shut his cell phone off.
A lot of the newer
even
cell
ask.
phones,
He's not here, is he?
Well, we can just drape Brian
Sorry,
in this
Brian.
mesh and
a lot of the
shield
newer
him.
cell phones are encrypted now, so it's less likely as the newer cell phones get developed that you'll have problems with interference with your recording devices. But older cell phones, cordless phones, baby monitors, things like that are more problematic.
Okay. Well, I was at a church service recently this past summer, and we had a guest speaker come up to the podium, and as soon as he came up, there's all this interference. Fortunately, it wasn't during the service, it was just checking the mics, but just all this interference going around. And I was running the sound, and I recognized he's got a cell phone on him. So all he had to do was just turn it off, and that alleviated the problem. I mean, I think it's very similar to this.
You don't have to be using it for it to be
Right.
receiving and sending signals out.
Right, exactly, exactly.
Has there been any more research? I think I may have asked you either during the show last time or right after about all of this impact all of these waves that we're absorbing on the human brain. I mean, I know this may not be your specialty, but you do research all of this, so have you heard anything?
Nothing new. I mean, there is research that people are affected by it. In fact, Pat and I were discussing it earlier. There's something called electromagnetic hypersensitivity syndrome. Don't say that 3 times fast,
Right.
but it is something that's being reported a lot more frequently than it had been because of the advent of Wi-Fi in office buildings, public Wi-Fi, people going to different places and reporting feeling nauseated, headaches, other electromagnetic induced illnesses, but there's no scientific backing for that.
No, but I mean, I always think of, one of the things that I always like to talk about when we do our lectures are the effects of EMF on the brain, as far as I know, demonstrated by the Persinger helmet, Dr. Persinger. And,
God helmet.
Right. And I always bring up the example of his case with the little girl and the alarm clock. And I always think to myself, you know, she was absorbing these, this EM field and experiencing this. You know, we're all sort of bombarded by this stuff, even if it's not to the extent that she was. You know, is this do I get an excuse now for being the way I am? Because there's too many waves coming in. I don't know, but
Yes.
In the business world, electromagnetic fields are starting to gain more exposure. Industrial hygienists actually look at EMF exposure as a reason for some of the symptoms people will feel in the workplace that are adverse. I know in my work we do that on a regular basis. We'll do EMF analysis to see if that's part of the problem.
oh, good. They should do that where I work.
Sure.
How about your luck with, as far as, you know, you were talking about EVPs. How much luck? Can you give us some examples? I know you didn't bring any with you, but what you have been able to capture using the Faraday wave cage.
Well, the initial application I think we discussed last year, where the very first time that we used it, we got an EVP of a little girl, and I believe the EVP that was recorded was on a standard analog recorder inside the enclosure that said, "I'm sorry." And it corresponded with another EVP that was captured in another portion of the house in a different device that said, "Mommy," and the voices were very similar. Since then, I'm kind of sorry to say that we haven't really recorded a lot of EVPs of any type that were really what we would consider evidence. I mean, we have a lot of EVP type recordings that we've had come in, but I'm pretty stringent when it comes to rejecting them if I think they're not really falling into the category of paranormal.
Which is good.
Absolutely. I mean, the last thing we want to do is flood everybody that we are trying to help with evidence that's questionable. We're just trying to give them answers to what they're experiencing. And if we didn't think that what we received was credible enough for us, then we're certainly not going to give it to them. So, and I haven't done a lot of investigating for the last year. I've been doing the research end of it, so I'm back out.
Somebody's got to do it. We're counting on you guys.
Somebody's got to do it. So
Exactly.
but I'll be back out this year. I'm planning to do a lot more investigating and field work, and we'll be putting more of this stuff to practical use to see what we get for results.
And this year we looked really hard at EMF and a white paper describing the different aspects of EMF that can be affected during investigation or create false anomalies.
Can you sort of go into that a little bit?
Sure, actually I can demonstrate something for you. One thing that can happen is that, well, I'll start with saying that human beings generate very low frequency electromagnetic fields. So small that there is no current scientific equipment that can measure it. However, we use EMF detectors all the time during our investigations to try to measure for the presence of a ghost. If we believe that ghosts are our former human selves, then I think you can make the next step and say that, well, maybe the magnetic fields that they generate are similar in size. So if that's the case, then realistically we wouldn't be able to use a regular EMF detector, a handheld detector, to measure the electromagnetic field that a ghost creates. Now that said, when we're on investigations, a lot of times we'll get anomalous readings and people get excited about it and write it down and say, oh, I got a spike, or 1, 2, 3, 4 milligauss. One thing that can happen is that you have a DC field that is all around us all the time. The Earth generates a magnetic field. It's usually right around half a Gauss. So if you take a DC field, which is a direct current field, and you use an AC meter to measure that, you can't do that. So I have a magnet. So if I were to take this magnet and try to keep it stable, because it's already orienting itself, but if I take this meter and place it next to the magnet in a stationary position, you can't measure the field that it generates. However, if you move a DC field if you move your meter relative to that DC field, or move the DC field relative to your meter, by that back and forth motion creates an AC field. So you can get a false reading. All I have to do is move the magnet back and forth,
Oh, yes.
and I can spike the K2 meter because it believes it's measuring an AC field, but it's really not. So what you have to do is you have to be cognizant of what your surroundings are. So if you're walking very quickly up a metal staircase in a lighthouse, you could get false readings on your AC meter. So what we propose to at least our investigators is, whenever you do AC readings, always make sure your meter is stationary and that you're not moving, so that you don't create a false anomaly.
You know, essentially the use of the EMF detector is to try to find fluctuations in the natural field around you, because as we know, those fluctuations could be something paranormal moving through the room. And as Pat described, if you're moving the meter as well, then you're really creating an AC field, or you're reading an AC field that's a false field. And the metal staircase is a good example of that. Especially if you're in a building, even like a warehouse with a lot of metal structure in there.
Or a large prison.
Yes,
you know.
right.
So you have to be aware of your surroundings, because that magnetic field is always there.
Do you think this could actually be conducive to paranormal activity, though? You've got like the magnetic fields, heavy metal content, mineral content, and it could give false readings, but it could be something anomalous as well, correct?
In my personal opinion, I don't think these meters are sensitive enough to measure a field that a ghost could generate, but that doesn't mean that a ghost could could borrow energy from something else and create a field strong enough. But from a scientific perspective, I think there are so many things that could be causing it that I probably would throw it out, unless it happens coincident with other things to help support it.
Right. I agree totally.
And it's just one of those things that makes our job a lot more difficult, because we have more things to wade through to get to what we're really looking for. But nobody said it was going to be easy.
Right, that's true.
Also, that's something interesting to keep in mind for investigators who rely heavily on their EMF detectors. I never really thought of that you know, you can't really measure an EM field from a human with our instruments, and it does make sense that if what we're trying to capture is evidence of a human that's passed on, you wouldn't think that their energy would, the energy that they're giving off would change, that the measurement would change. I don't normally try to use my EMF detector for that anyway. I don't usually walk around with it. I mean, looking for an entity, I more or less look at it to sort of rule things out, sort of look for why someone might be experiencing something, you know, I mean, if they're the little girl with the alarm clock sleeping in the field. But that is something that people need to keep in mind. That's an excellent point.
Well, we tend to go in and we're looking for large man-made electromagnetic fields, like a refrigerator or a plasma TV may put out. And if someone's sitting within that affected area and they're experiencing paranormal activity or headaches or other phenomena, it could be caused from that electromagnetic field. So we're going in just first of all looking for those man-made electromagnetic fields. But I feel that if you're using that device to go throughout the house looking for a spirit, that device is actually detracting your attention from things you should be observing, which are the physical changes that are going on around you. So if you're looking at that device, it's really kind of watering down your ability to investigate thoroughly.
But I really do think it's a great point to drive home, because if you watch the ghost shows, which I don't really watch them very often, but I do see that that's what they're using the EMF detectors for on these shows, and it's really inappropriate.
Yeah. Or if you're on a very large ship where everything's made of metal.
Right. Well, even last night, we were with Brian, and we weren't even investigating as yet. I was downstairs trying to get a baseline, just in the parlor. As soon as I turned on the EMF, it just was going out. I mean, it was spiking, and it was just going off, and I guess the Christmas tree seemed to be going. Just every time I got near the Christmas tree, you know, and
The ghost of Santa Claus.
right. Yeah, that's
Christmas past.
It really seemed that way. So, Dave, tell me about. Of course, you had your book published. There Are Ghosts in Our World, but Are They All Real? Excellent read, as we've said. What's coming up as far as literary?
Is there another one in the offing?
There's another one in the works, and it's already in progress. It's a collection similar to Keith's recent books, where I'm going to retell some of the investigations that I've been on that I think people will enjoy reading about, including some activity that took place at my own home, my former home, in New Hampshire. So I'm excited to share personal experience, and not all fun, but definitely educational. So I'm hoping that this will be interesting reading material for the people that enjoy books on the paranormal, and I'm excited to get it published. And some of the investigations that I've done with New England Paranormal will be in there as well.
Look for that collection by Dave Manch.
And of course,
looking forward to that.
yes, I was honored, very honored to write about the both of you in my last book, Paranormal Realities, too.
Well, the honor was ours.
Yes,
That was
thank you
very,
very much.
Yeah.
very nice.
A chapter about Dave and Pat, and actually there's a lot of information there that you shared with us that I think is very, very valuable, very valuable. You know, and I want to emphasize how much I respect these men and how much they actually do add to the field of paranormal research. And they're two very unsung heroes, in my opinion, that, what you've contributed, you don't always get the credit for it, but nationally, but, they have contributed so much, and I think it's people like you that keep us going, keep the field on its toes and know what to look for and what not to look for. So
Thank
really,
you,
That's
Keith.
kind of you.
Very
Definitely
nice.
second that.
As you know, our main objective is to, first and foremost, is to help the people who are asking for our assistance. And in order to do that, we really want to strengthen our own skills as far as determining what it is that's going on and seeking the ultimate answer is what are these things that we're experiencing.
Exactly. Well, anybody in the studio audience, if you would like to come down now and say hello, meet our guest, you're welcome to come up front here, say hi to everybody, and
Come on down.
yeah, guys, I want you on again. It's too far in between to have you on just once a year. So I mean, you have so much to contribute.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Glad you
so
enjoyed it.
we'd like you on again very soon, and we'll continue our chat at Buckstars.
It sounds great to me.
Okay, guys.
Star as it is.
Thanks again.
Thank you,
God
Keith.
bless.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Season's greetings, and.